Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tell Me Why, a short, sharp podcast for busy Beatles people in the know or busy Beatles people who want to be in the know. You know, John Lennon talked about the faces and places that he remembered all his life. And for me, the best part of the 38 years that I have spent researching and telling John's story has been getting to know some incredible people who are crucial, integral to John's story, and who have wonderfully become my friends. And our guest today is the toppermost of the poppermost, without any doubt. Let me just give you a brief summary of some of the things that he's accomplished. As a very gifted journalist, he moved to Los Angeles to be a foreign correspondent for the Daily Express and researched all sorts of exciting events from the 1960s, such as the Watts riots or the Charles Manson murders. He wrote a book called Five to Die. I'll show you a copy of it, which was so authentic on the Charles Manson murders that it was accepted as court record. And then a few years ago, he turned around and took this small book and expanded it to let people know what's happened to Charles Manson over the last 5 decades in a book, horrifying book called Manson Exposed. This is just one of the things that he's done. Here's the new book. It tells you, the whole story from beginning to end, coming up to date. He was good friends with Muhammad Ali, interviewed him, Steve McQueen, Ali McGraw, Elizabeth Taylor. I could go on and on. In 1964, he was assigned the wonderful, but I'm sure at that time to him, it was not a wonderful task, of following the Beatles from day one to day end of the 1964 North American tour. He is, contrary to what you hear, the only reporter who was there every single day. Others hopped on and off the plane for important reasons. Art Schreiber with the Westinghouse Network joined them in Atlantic City because he'd been covering the Democratic National Convention. Larry Kane, when they got to Key West, jumped off for a couple of days to go back to WFUN in Miami, where he worked. Everybody jumped off at some point for various reasons, but our guest today was there the entire time. And not only was he there, but he was the ghostwriter for George Harrison's daily column and worked very closely with George. He went on to do so many more things. He was with Bobby Kennedy the night that Bobby was assassinated, after being part of his core team that traveled with Bobby during his run for president of the United States. He was one of Reagan's boys on the bus. I could tell you all kinds of stories, but we're talking to him today in his capacity as a Beatles author and also as the author of an exciting new book, which is absolutely, and I have read all of his books, the most exciting book and the best book he's ever written. And we'll save that for last. But thank you for being with us today, and welcome to the show, Mr. Ivor Davis.
Thank you, Jude, for that incredible introduction. I think I should be, the way you're going, I'm ready for a sainthood, but I'll turn it down. It's always a pleasure to be with you because, we kind of talk the same language in a way. I know that sounds maybe a bit pompous, but you know what I mean.
Oh, we could get together and talk Beatles and journalism and writing and editing and all of that all night long, couldn't we?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we'll get right to this was your very first book about the Beatles and Me on tour. And my copy is quite underlined and dog-eared with notes written everywhere. And this book is so authoritative, and you tell stories that are mistold in other books. For example, the night that the Beatles had marijuana for the first time with Bob Dylan. You tell the real story. I'll let you expound upon that. But you actually were there, you witnessed it, you saw it, and it was a great book. Recently, you have taken that book, and I'll show you the difference in the two. You have taken the Beatles and Me on tour, and you've expanded it in the 60th anniversary edition of that book. Tell me why you decided to expand it, what you added, and how this book is a little bit different.
The book is a bit different. I mean, it has the meat of my original book. But over the years, as you all know, as a John Lennon expert worldwide, people come to you, they tell you stories that you never knew. You travel around promoting the book, and they ask you questions that you think, oh, why didn't I think of that? So I put together this compilation of new stuff. For example, I don't want to go on too long, but how much do the Beatles earn every day? I mean, would you believe that the Apple organization pays the Beatles in the region of $46,000 a day? And that doesn't include Paul's own tour, Ringo's tour. So every day, ka-ting, ka-cling, or whatever it is, $46,000. And I got a bit occupied. What is Paul worth? Paul is worth today $1.4 billion. Ringo is, of course, much more poverty-stricken. He is only worth $400 million, sorry, $400 million. So he has to watch his P's and Q's and his spending. And Taylor Swift is catching up Paul, but hasn't reached him yet. But it probably won't reach Paul because Paul is, as we know, a master merchandiser. And the other story that I love to tell is I went to see a friend in Malibu who had me. I've been on the podcast with him in Australia. We had dinner in a restaurant in Malibu on the beach. And as I was leaving, the manager said, oh, you should have been in here last night because Paul and Nancy came in for dinner. I thought, what's Paul doing in Malibu here? And the manager said to me, well, Paul just bought a mobile home for $5.4 million. Yes, $5.4 million. I checked it out. And indeed, I mean, mobile homes, the one that Paul bought is not your sort of modest one. And then the other funny line that I love about this is then, as we were leaving, I said to the waitress, did Paul was in last night? She said, yes, I served him. I said, well, what did you think of him? She said he was a nice old English gentleman with a white beard. So for those of us who have slightly white beards, welcome to the party. I mean, so anybody who doesn't know Paul considers him a nice old English gentleman with a white beard. Anyway, so those are the funny stories and so much more that I've included. Joan Baez, and I heard about Joan Baez from other people, and I spoke to rock and roll people like Sting and Elton John, and they told me how the Beatles influenced them so heavily. So there's a lot of more rich stuff, plus a lot of new pictures, additional pictures that my buddies on the Beatle tour let me have.
Yes. And most people, well, I won't say most, but I'll say a lot of people that do expanded books, all they do is just increase the font. And it's basically the same book, but it's just looks like it's enhanced. That is not the case with this book. There are many.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is you become friends with great photographers, Henry Diltz, Harry Benson, two of the greatest photographers, and you say, you sort of plead poverty. And there's Cyril Maitland's picture of John. And they're very kind, and they say there's a lot of extra pictures, a lot of extra stuff, and I enjoyed doing it, revisiting it, if you like.
Yeah, here's one of the pictures. There are many that are in this new version that were not in the original. And that is one of the things that readers most want. I think my third book had 22 photographs, and I got dinged for not having enough photographs on Amazon. So the photographs are there, new stories are there, new information is there. This is an excellent anniversary edition. I highly recommend it. Now, I'm struggling because I have a new book coming out in March of 2025, and I'm just writing like a maniac and thinking, am I going to make it? But last year, you wrote not one, but two books. And the second book other than the fact that it took place in Malibu, which John Lennon referred to as the land of the beautiful people. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people? You lived in Malibu with your intelligent, lovely wife, Sally Ogle Davis, and you were friends with a guy that, gee, everybody liked. Everybody liked. I mean, he helped you coach soccer. I think he was your assistant soccer coach, and he did things for people, and he was very helpful. But as it turns out, he murdered his wife and his little son, stepson, and possibly his first wife as well. It is a horrifying, riveting. I thought Manson Exposed was scary. It doesn't hold a candle to The Devil and My Friend. So why? Tell me why? Why am I? What I really want to know is, Ivor, why am I such a dunce that I can barely write one book? And you did too. And this is a great book. Tell us why, after 5 decades, you decided to tell this story.
Well, I think it's the best book I've ever done, mainly because my late wife, Sally, wrote most of it. I mean, you can see her words, her description, her power of talking about people, and because it never came out when she was alive, it was kind of under my skin, and I just wanted to bring it out because it's a great story, and because in memory of Sally, and I mean, basically the nitty gritty is, do you really know your friends, or do you think you know your friends, or are you arrogant in believing you think you know them? And it turns out that this is the most topsy-turvy thing that's ever happened to me. A guy I believed in, a guy I went to bat for, a guy I testified for in his murder trial as being a good guy, was really a killer. And as you touched upon, not only did he kill his wife and his 8-year-old stepson, who was exactly the same age as my son, he probably got away with killing his first wife. But that's another story, and maybe whoever's interested could pick up the book, because I am a great fan of my own book, and I guess you have to be, don't you?
You do have to be, and it is a great book. The only cautionary tale with this book is, start reading it when you have about 3 days to give to it. I've heard this before. I've heard people say, I couldn't put it down, or I would make bargains with myself. I would say, just go to the end of this chapter and then you've got to go to bed. Okay. Just go to the end of the next chapter and then you've got to go to bed. You cannot stop reading this book. It is fascinating. And you know from the beginning the premise of it, but you can't believe what you're reading. It was shocking, wasn't it, Ivor?
It was. And I must say, I just had a great idea with what you said. I think I will provide readers who buy the book with 6 no-dose pills in the book, so that if they fall asleep or they want to read it over 3 days, they can take a no-dose pill and stay awake.
I think it's a great idea, or a really nice little bag of coffee that goes with it.
Yes, but okay, that's true. Yes, I don't want to be a drug dealer, do I? Oh,
well, you are with the Beatles, so you know how.
Wow, that's another story. Yeah.
So you traveled not only in 1964, but again in 1965 with the Beatles. You were there were 2 journalists, that's it, 2, who were invited to go with the Beatles to meet Elvis in Elvis's home. And you were with them at the Hollywood Bowl. You were with them in San Diego. You and Art Shriver used to play Monopoly with John till the sun came up, really, and then get up and lead a full day. I mean, you still had to write the next day and report the next day, and you'd been up all night. So you knew this character pretty well. Is there a favorite John Lennon quote of yours that comes to mind?
Well, John Lennon was full of marvelous quotes, but I always remember, and this is not really a quote, but I remember talking to John about Elvis. And John was, as you know, a great fan of Elvis. Their meeting didn't quite go as they planned, although they said afterwards it was wonderful, it was sensational, but that was much later. And John said to me, I was in the army, in the British Army. I served 2 years. I had to. John said to me he would never go into the British Army if they called him up. And I always thought this was weird. I said, well, what are you going to do, John? And he said, I would emigrate to Ireland, because Ireland is not in, even though Northern Ireland is British, Southern Ireland, where John had roots. So he was going to escape, flee the country. And he said the reason he would not serve in the British Army, because look what happened to Elvis. Elvis screwed his life up by being away for so long, had a problem coming back, and it was a lesson, a hard lesson that John learned. And the idea that John would be an illegal immigrant or whatever, flee the country is bizarre, but that's what he said.
Yeah, yeah. And really, he never gave that dream up, because he purchased an island off the coast of Ireland. He was going to retire there. He said boldly he was going to take Yoko and they were going to retire there. And being an Oleanan, he was looking forward to returning to his roots. In fact, he got furious because the MacLeissett's book of famous Irish people, Irish family trees, did not, it said people who've accomplished great things in the music and the arts, and it didn't list him. Yeah. And he wrote on the page, what about John Lennon? So in 1982, after his passing, the book came out, and this time John Lennon was listed in it. But he loved Ireland. Which one of these, I mean, it's hard to say, I'm sure, but which one did you have more fun writing? And I'm guessing it's The Devil and My Friend. Is that?
I wouldn't say I had fun in writing it, because it meant me re-examining my own ability and realizing I was naive then. I was naive back when I knew my friend Fred Rayler. And so I fell for his story, hook, line, and sinker. I think I had more fun writing about the Beatles, because the Beatles were more fun. I mean, who? And I always say, I wish I'd taken my tape recorder and recorded like Arthur Schreiber did, like Larry Kane did, because tape recording, but as a reporter, you wrote it down in a notebook. I never kept the notebook. We all regret things we should have done a few decades ago, don't we, Jude?
Yeah, so many times I was with people, had lunch with Bob Willer, the DJ at the Cavern Club, and we had a wonderful time, and we talked, and I can tell you what we had to eat. And I didn't ask him to take a photograph. I mean, I have several things that he gave me that day that he signed, but why, oh, why didn't I do that? You don't want to act like a tourist, but that was a golden opportunity. I mean, now we look back but anyway, these are two excellent books. And I started reading The Devil and My Friend because I like Ivor and I wanted to read his book. But 10 pages into it, I'd even forgotten about Ivor. All I was thinking about was, what is going on here? Oh my gosh, it catches you. You're hooked from the very first moment. So congratulations on both books. And I hope to see you very soon. We're going to miss you so much at the Fest for Beatles fans, but I'll see you in 2025.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here, Ivor. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank
you, everyone, for joining us. Ta-ra and shine on.